Have you ever tried to run ads on Facebook for your own digital business, whether that's an agency or an online coaching program, or even maybe a client of yours? If you had, then listen up, because this video is exactly for you. What we're going to go over specifically is I'm interviewing a student who was in the GSD program. We helped him get his personal Facebook ads that he was running to get clients for his agency. We helped him get his cost per lead down from what was $120 a lead all the way down to $10 a lead. And the more important thing is he'd actually taken a little bit of a dip in his revenue lately. He dropped down to about $20,000 a month, whereas previously he'd been at about 40, 50. After we implemented the exact strategy, and guys, we break down the literal targeting, the actual ads, and what we went through with him to get this back up. After we implemented this process with him, we were actually able to not only get his lead cost down from 120 all the way to 10, but after 3 months running these ads and having everything set up, he was actually able to get all the way back up to $70,000 months. Guys, as always, if you find this video helpful, if you find this stuff to be a big part of how you plan to grow your business, all I ask in return is for you to smash that subscribe button right below this video so that you're here next week when we drop the next one. We are giving away information that elsewhere would literally cost you tens of thousands of dollars. How do I know? Because we've paid that much money to learn it over the last half a decade to a decade plus of our experience. And to be honest, we've charged that much for a lot of this stuff as well. Now I've created this YouTube channel just to give back, to give a lot of this away for free. So smash that subscribe button. Make sure you've got your notifications turned on for next week, and let's dive in. This is an interview with the GSD student going over the exact process we use to lower his lead cost from $120 a lead all the way to $10 and take him to $70,000 months. Let's jump in.
My name is Mason. At this moment in time, I run a digital marketing agency for real estate professionals, as a lot of other people online do. I've been with GSD since, I think, around March of last year. So just over a year. I think we're like a year and 2 or 3 months in that I've been partners. So I don't know if that technically makes me alumni status or what, but prior to that, in my past life, I went to school for mechanical engineering. I was a mechanical engineer for several years after school. Just found myself kind of slowly growing a little more and more unfulfilled in the role that I had. Not to mention, I kind of moved up within the company I was in. I was at a great company, great team and everything. But I moved up fairly quickly through the ranks. And then I got to a point where they basically told me I have to wait to move up. I'd have to wait until the guys above me retired. And that was going to be a good 5 to 10 years at a minimum. Didn't really want to wait that long to see that bump in pay and everything. So I decided to do some marketing stuff on the side. Was doing my own thing as a digital marketing agency with a lot of different types of people in the area, just locally, chiropractors, dentists, gym owners, some real estate professionals as well. And then finally, I think it was January, I was really doing the trials most of 2017, going into 2018. And then just doing trials, really made like zero money, essentially, maybe a couple $100. That was it. If that. I'm being nice, I suppose, to myself. And then
we'll allow it. That's fine.
In September of 2019 is when I had decided, leading up to that, I saved up 6 months worth of expenses from the engineering career, and then decided I was going to dive all in and do whatever it took to find mentorship and make the business work. I did the old Tony Robbins burn the ships type of thing, like he talks about. So I basically gave my 2-week notice, and just to be totally transparent, at that point in time, I had 0 clients, nobody at all. Not even trial clients. So I was just going in with motivation, the mind power, the willingness to do whatever it took. And so quit. And now here we are. I got up to about 10 to 12K a month I don't want to say on my own. I had the help of another program prior to this. And then that program dissolved. That person who ran that program went on to do other things. But I still had a great experience. It got me from 0 to 12K. And then from there, around 12K is when I joined GSD. But I was fluctuating from like 1 month would be 5,000, 6,000. The next month would be 12, 13. Then it would drop back down again. And now, do you want me to give everybody a quick idea of where I'm at now, or do you want to say?
Yeah, man, keep going. I'm not going to stop you till you're
okay.
Good.
All right. So I went from there, like I said, just a little bit over a year. I've been with GSD the past 6 months, for instance, apart from the 2 months we're about to talk about with the advertisements and everything. The past 6 months, we've been averaging 50 to 60,000 a month. Is pretty regular now, pretty consistent for about the past half a year. And overall, since joining GSD, I went from overall cash collected, like revenue with the incoming into the business, around, I want to say it was less than 20 grand total, I think, coming into it, because I only got it to that 5 to 12 mark a couple months before I joined you guys. And now we're around 700,000 in cash collected since we've joined GSD. And then GSD, of course, is
now, right. So that's incredible, man. I said that's just over a year, right? So 700 plus grand in about, probably 13 months or so, and 50 to 60K a month. That's, first of all, I always like to stop. So this is something for all you guys out in Facebook land. This is what we do in the GSD when we're celebrating wins and stuff. We give rounds of applause. We lift each other up. So if you're in the comments right now, give some love to Mason. I mean, how awesome is that story? Quit your job, have a bit of a safety net, start from zero, get to one thing where you leverage up a high ticket skill, get to 10K, 5 to 10K, and then leverage that newfound money to get to the next level and find that next family that's going to help you get to that 50, 60K, which is where we're at now. So I want to be real with people. Right. So that's the good shit. And actually, before we get into the real thing, I do feel obligated to have a shameless plug. So what do you think was about the GSD? What was the best parts of the GSD family, if you don't mind sharing with other people who might be on the fence or who have seen us before? But what was the best parts about it that really helped you get from that 5 to 10K month all the way up to the 60K? Like, what was the biggest strength you think that helped you level that up?
If I had to summarize it into one thing, it'd be the main thing that won me over in terms of actually, taking care of the invoice and moving forward and partnering with you guys. And that was the fact that there are a ton of different programs out there. I've been a part of a couple others, one of which I already mentioned a second ago. And there are a lot of people out there that can do good things. But the one thing that won me over and was the most advantageous once I did join was the fact that what you guys are coaching, you are doing. Not only that, not only have you done it, you're still actively doing it. And you're the ones that are actually coaching everybody. Most of the other programs out there, I would say a good 90% of the other ones that I considered, they were all great programs. They all have, I want to say roughly the same amount of testimonies. You hear the same thing at the surface level before you talk to them. They sound very similar. But one thing none of them have, for the most part, or 90% of them don't, is that the coaches you get coached by in that program are not the person who did it. That person is now up here, one level removed. And you're being taught by people who used to run their own agency and then stopped running it for whatever reason, or they've just been in sales and now they're coaching you or something like that. They're not actually the ones, they haven't actually done it, or they're not doing it actively anymore, that type of thing. And so having you and Rahul, knowing that one, you guys had done exactly what I've wanted to do, not just in the agency space, if I wanted to switch to coaching, but more specifically in real estate, you guys have already done it. You're still doing it. So you didn't give it up. Like most people will do it until they're successful and then all of a sudden become a coach and that's all they do. But you guys still run that agency successfully. And that goes to show what you were talking about earlier with consistency and making sure you have that support. So obviously you guys were doing something right. If you've still done it after all these years, I think combined experience, you guys have 20 plus years of experience of running this type of thing. And not only that, on top of it, you've done it before, you're still doing it. And you guys are actually the ones doing the coaching, which just was the main selling point for me. And I think if I had to narrow down to one thing, that'd be the biggest thing that I enjoyed about it.
Love it, man. And I
still enjoy about it.
Just to share the love back to Mr. Mason too, for everybody out there in Facebook land. One of the reasons why he's been super successful is because, so he's been through the whole program. Plus he's a graduate now. So he's an alumni. He's just keeps going with us. He shows up. He gets shit done all the time. And it's when he creates a bottleneck for himself. And we're going to go through that in a second. This is my lead into that. When there's a bottleneck that pops up and maybe revenue kind of dips, he leverages the support system and the community around him. One thing that myself and Rahul say all the time is every now and then we're like, okay, we got to buy new friends. We got to buy another thing to go talk to, another talking head to go be with, because not so much for the training even half the time, but it's for just having walls to bounce the ideas off of. And so one thing that we like to pride ourselves on, right, with the shit that we do is we try to keep it real with all of you guys. All right. What that means to me is it's not always just about the highlight reel. Right. So Mason's been super, super nice enough. And I want, again, you guys drop some love in the comments. Let me go see what's up in the comments. Drop some love in the comments and drop your questions for everything that we get into. We always treat these as a live Ask Me Anything. So all we do is, comment, drop some hearts, all that stuff. But Mason's been nice enough to get real, because what actually happened was it hasn't been all $60,000 months, right, Mason? There was a couple of months there in the last, not the last 2 months, we've gotten it back to normal. We'll talk about that in a second. But before that, I think you said, how many months was it that we took the dip on?
Yeah, everything was pretty normal and consistent at 50 to 60 for a good, I would say, about 4 months or so. And then Facebook changed a few things, as they always do. So half of my bookings were coming from setters. Half of my bookings were coming from the advertisements that you had taught me how to run. And then they made the changes where they got rid of being able to target the National Association of Realtors and a lot of other big ones that were like the main breadwinners that most of us in the real estate space use. And so it just tanked half of my bookings. And because of that, I had half the amount of appointment bookings, half the amount of closings, because my sales ratio didn't change, like my closing ratio and that type of stuff, but I had half the appointments coming through. So we went from consistent 50 to 60 down to a month of only about 18, which, again, I had to snap myself back into like, it's not that bad. But when you get to used to that new normal, like, I think that's just something that entrepreneurs deal with, right? You get used to that quote new normal, even though there's not really a new normal ever. And that change happened. We dropped down to 18, which felt like we were bringing in nothing since I got used to that new number. The next month was a tiny bit better. We brought in about 22. And then we were able to work on the ads, which we're going to talk through here about how we workshop that. Because the lead costs, when they made those changes, spiked up from, we were sub $20 leads. They spiked up to like around 120, 125, something like that. And now we brought them back down to about a tenth of that. And they're hovering between $10 and $20. And since then, we've gotten back up the past couple months to 50 and 60, right back where we were before, essentially.
And do you attribute a lot of that to the ads and the lead flow and the setter process that's all kind of combining to be able to get you back to that?
Oh, definitely. In this particular instance, I would have to say more so the advertisements, because the setter was still doing well, still doing good. Everything was going as normal, still the same amount of bookings. In this particular case, I would say definitely the ads have helped out. Not to mention just kind of the constant reminders from you guys of making sure to keep your head on the right track. Like, and I had to, a lot of that comes from me too. Like, I had to remind myself, like, look, even though there's only 18 coming in and we have more expenses than we used to, now that we have a bigger team and stuff, I have to continue to invest in myself, treat it as if I don't know everything, right? And be open and willing to learn. And not just that, but when shit goes wrong and it hits the fan, part of my French, being that person that jumps in the call immediately, not to toot my own horn, but like, I'm super impatient. So it's like when something's wrong, I want to fix it now. And so that's why every time I jump on the call, I'm in the waiting room before it pops up, I'm always the first person to raise my hand, which I'm sure other people that are in the group that may be watching this can attest to that.
No, 100%.
And I get my answer. And then
as the coach, Mason is the first guy on there and the first guy with his hand raised at least the last like 3 weeks in a row. Right. Yeah. And that being selfish, right? That's why we're fixing this shit. So I wanted to stop you there for a second, because I want to give your perspective, right? I think especially with a lot of newer agencies, and we got a lot of newer agencies in this group and a lot of mid-range agencies that are going through it, the mindset, right? The mind fuck. I think you kind of just talked about it a little bit, where it was like, okay, well, we dipped down, right? We dipped down. I got used to this new number. And this is what we call, and everywhere in investing and in business, is normalizing things, right? So when you're at 10K a month, you think that being at 50, 60K a month is going to be like the most amazing thing ever. But once you're there for a bit, you're normalized that. And that's now in your brain, it's a floor. And that might not be the safest way to talk about it, because it's always true. You know, one thing that I've learned is the more you normalize and excite yourself on the way up, the worse it is on the way back down. And so the mindset issues here is like you talked about it. Okay, well, I'm used to this number. So now even though 20K a month is not anything to scoff at, it feels like I'm not making enough. And I've got the higher stress points of all my team and all that. So can you talk a little bit about, how did you handle the mindset struggles there and the stress points enough to be able to work your way through it and then get past it? I think that'll be beneficial for other people in the same situation.
Yeah, I think what has helped me along the way, because like if you were basing it purely off the graph of our Stripe account, you'd see that like my growth was like this, or our growth as a team, and then it spikes up, down, and it's still trending this direction, but it's literally based on some of the numbers we talked about. If you literally look at it, it goes like this, and it spikes all the way down and comes up and spikes all the way back down again. And I think one thing I realized is I forget what one of those big books that most entrepreneurs read that it's in, but like there's a season for reaping and there's a season for sowing, right? Or sowing, reaping, vice versa. And so thinking about it that way, like those are some of the months that I slowed down. So I had to realize like, okay, part of the reason I slowed down is because sometimes you need to take a step back to put the right systems in place to then accelerate another 2 steps forward or 3 steps forward or whatever. But then what I typically do is I compare it back to where I was before. So like in that instance, that first month we dropped down to 18. I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, I was like, I should not be here with the skills we all have now, that not just I have, but the team has, the systems we have in place. Like there's no reason we should ever drop below really like 35, 40 at a minimum with where we're at now. And I personally, just throwing this out there, I already wanted to be past 100,000, but I know it's going to take the time. I got to put the right systems in place. But what I did when I dropped down to 18 is I sat down and I was like, all right, I caught myself like kind of worrying about it, or it was almost more like complaining about it. Like I was like, why the hell is this going on?
Yep.
And I told myself, what would myself back in September of 2019 or 2020, pardon me, when I quit my job, when I had 0 clients or nothing, what would that person be saying to me now about me complaining that we're bringing in 18 a month? And so that's what I typically do. Like, and it really kind of snaps me back to reality. Like I should be grateful that I even have this, because I was grateful to even get my first client. You know what I mean? To even have the opportunity to try to get my first client. I was grateful for that. And so it kind of helps me retract and kind of break away that what I'll say is negative normalizing.
Well, we also get away from our good habits. Right. Like I remember right around that time, I think after the end of the first month, you came back and you started showing up to like every call. So like you could tell at that moment, I can tell, okay, well, you know, we got, for once, I don't have the freaking t-shirt on, but we have the GSD mode on thing that we put everywhere in the whole world. Right. Like I could tell this was Mason being like, all right, well, like shake off the stressing about it and complaining about it isn't going to get me anywhere. It's time to go GSD mode on and just do this shit. And that's not just about showing up to our shit. It's about just, I'm going to show up and fix this shit. Right. And part of that is leaning on the mentorship you purchased, but part of that is just, okay, well, complaining and worrying isn't going to do anything. And having that conversation, I do a similar process. I call it talking to 5 years ago, Cody. If 5 years ago, Cody wouldn't complain about what I'm complaining about right now, then I probably should just shut up and get back to work.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the way I treat it. Yep.
Cool, man. I love that. So everybody out there, you know, hopefully that helps. You know, it's the reality of it. So it's easy to sit here and be like, yeah, 60K months I've been having since I got in here. But the reality of it is, yeah, he had 4 or 5 of them and he dipped back down to around 20 for a couple of months and then he fixed it. And we're right back up to 60 now for, I think the last 2 months in a row, you said 50 to 60, right?
Yep.
And I think, didn't you just sign, I believe we celebrated last week and you told me this week. So a 16K Piffy. And for everybody who doesn't know what the hell that is, so I don't just sound weird, Piffy means paid in full. So 16K paid in full and then another 8K contract paid in full in the last week and a half or something like that too. So is that correct?
Yep. That's my personal best so far in a paid in full, the 16,000. And then we had another 8K paid in full a couple of days after that.
Love it. So we'll be up to that. Now that we're back and corrected, we'll be up to that 100K a month here soon. And we'll be celebrating that inside of here. So now I want to talk about the, topic. What was the process you went through to get some working ads that were doing well before this whole thing happened initially? What was the process there that you went through?
First thing was working on the offer with you guys. So obviously I knew what I had to offer the clients, but packaging the offer itself, meaning what you were going to display in the advertisements. So we workshopped that. We tested or we were looking at the few options there, kind of compared to the marketplace to see what other people were doing. So it didn't look just like everybody else at the time, but now I'm getting to a point where there are some people that are doing now what I started doing. So now I got to refresh because people caught on to what we were doing too. But that's where we started first with the offer. And then we went through the rapid fire testing, which anybody who's a part of GSD or has been on a training call like this, where it's been mentioned before, is somewhat familiar with it. But that's, of course, the process that helps you minimize your variables to basically narrow down the best working offer. So you start with your audiences first. After you figure out your audiences, then you go to your ad copy itself, and then you have your images, your headlines, all that type of stuff from there, but so on and so forth. So that's what we did first. That probably took, I don't know, I would say, like, with the workshopping the offer, again, everybody's a little bit different. It depends on how much you're jumping on the calls and how quickly you're getting your questions answered. But I think to go through the whole offer process and diagnose the ads and get sub $20 ads, I mean, I think we did it within amount of like 45 days, I want to say, or so. I mean, it was pretty quick compared to, I mean, there are other people that take up to 6 months to a year. I've met some other entrepreneurs in like in-person networking events that said, I spent X amount on my ads before anything happened. And luckily, I mean, I did spend some on my own prior to meeting you guys, I think about $5,000. But I'm glad I met you guys when I did, because then it only took about 45 more days and I wasn't wasting any more of that money anymore. So I
don't remember if I've ever heard you say that before. So the $5,000 that you spent before working with me to help fix your ads, did you get anything from those before that, or were they?
I don't believe I closed any clients. I did get leads, but they were very high cost. I don't think I closed anybody though. I don't know if I can necessarily attribute that all to the ads. I think I also had some work to do on the sales front then, because I came from an engineering background. We're not even known for being people, let alone being salespeople.
Look how far he's come, everybody.
There's that, but it definitely was a piece of it. But I think that's also something I wanted to mention really quickly here, just in case there's anybody newer, because I faced this myself. I had that fear of wanting to spend that money up front, but I think it was a good thing that I did, because you have to be willing to spend, at least in my mind, you have to be willing to throw out at least the amount of money in advertisement spend it takes you to get a client at a minimum, because otherwise you're never going to know. One, you're probably not going to test long enough. You're going to kill it. You're going to panic, just like if you panic, buy or sell in the stock market. And not only that, but you got to think about what you're asking your clients to do. Like if you're asking your clients to spend $3,000 a month, whatever, $2,000, $1,500 for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever, you're asking them to do that in faith. So why wouldn't you put forward that $1,000 a month in ad spend or $500 a month?
I always find it weird. It's always been a pet peeve of mine, agencies who aren't willing to spend money on their own ads. It's always been weird to me. I get it. And I understand there's a lot of younger agencies out there like, man, I just don't have enough for ad spend yet. I get that. But once you get to a point, usually $3,000 to $5,000 a month, you probably should be then looking to spend at least, like what Mason just said, the minimum viable amount, which is, the amount of a client. So if you're getting like $1,500 a month for a client, you want to spend at least $1,500.
Right.
So I love that. So one little stopping point here, guys, I'm going to show you something. Okay. This is not a thing that we normally give away. All right. This is not a thing that I normally give away, but since Mason did bring it up, this is actually a visual representation of a rapid fire testing infographic that I personally designed for the course. Since we're going to be talking a lot about this, rounds, creatives, all of this kind of stuff, it might be beneficial to you guys. I think, what do we got? Like, if I click over here, I think we got about 19 of you guys on here right now. This is super, super valuable, in my opinion. Mason, do you think that this is super valuable? Do you think people should want to have this? What do you think? You've used this.
I think they should have it. Yes. Especially the newer you are to advertisements, the better.
Exactly. So you say about 45 days, probably. We worked on the offer, right? Then we went through these preliminary rounds of testing. And just so that you guys are clear on this, we're going to bring this up again in a second for what we did next. We test with a control ad and we test audiences. We optimize, and then we test hooks and offers. We optimize, and then we test creatives, and creatives is kind of an ongoing thing. Now, once we got that fully done, right, we ended up with, how many audiences did you have that were winning audiences running in the campaign when it was all said and done?
Before we ran into the Facebook issue, or
before the issue? So before any of this happened and it was just chugging along for a while, what was it? What did it end up?
My main breadwinner was the National Association of Realtors with a few other things tied in, but I had two really. It was that one and an interest-based ones with like real estate coaches, real estate magazines, that type of stuff. So I really had two winners. The NAR one was the biggest by far. That's where most of my closed clients came from the advertisements that did close. And then we, of course, can get into how many we've had after.
Now, Mason, what was your cost per lead before the issues started happening. So we worked on it for those 45 days, and then we had it going for quite a few months on end where it was feeding your sales team and all that. After all the testing, what did you have it down to around?
About $19. Every now and then it would bump up to about 21, but for the most part, we were around $19.50.
So around $19 ish, chugging along. And for a while, guys, because this is one of within a few months, we probably had Mason's ads up. The testing preliminary stages were done within 45 days. You've seen how long he's been with us. So I would say probably 6-7 months, probably the ads probably chugged along for around that rate. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Cool. That sounds amazing.
6 to 9 months.
Right. That sounds freaking amazing to me anyway. And to anybody else would be like, cool, fed me for a whole year. But then shit happens, people. I'll tell you right now, like if you've been running Facebook ads before the last 2 years, you were probably just not even realizing how good you had it. And then the last like 2.5 years, there's been nothing but change. I'm removing these targeting options. You don't get to do that anymore. No more of that kind of testing. We're going to change it all to CBO. Now we changed our mind, right? All the time, constantly, we're getting things thrown at us. And this is one of the reasons, and I mean, I like to hover on this for a second, Mason, like not necessarily that you need it, but isn't it great to have people to come in and talk it through when shit goes sideways like that? Right. I always like to have walls to talk. So how beneficial was it for when it all went wrong? Was it for you to come in and have people to talk to at that point? Like what was that like for you at that point?
I mean, it was great. I mean, that's the whole reason, like you said, I'm an alumni at this point. So I already went through the full program, you know what I mean? And I continue to work with you guys and invest with you each month, you know what I mean? As an alumni. So I have that safety net because that's all I really want. I just want that soundboard because there are some people out there that I feel can get along a little bit further on their own without needing it, especially if it's a company where there's 2 people that have each their own strengths and they have a partnership, but I don't have that partnership right now. I may in the future, but at the moment I don't, and I don't see myself in the immediate future. So like, I need somebody to bounce these ideas off of. I'm the only entrepreneur in my family. And I don't mean immediate family. I basically mean my extended family as well. So like, there isn't anybody I can really even talk to about sales in general, let alone just running a whole business and the systems and automations and ads. And so that really is the biggest reason. I think it goes to show how much it meant to me by the fact that I was up with the program probably over 6 months ago now, and I'm still here. And but so I mean,
to me, it's like, it goes to show that it's obviously still proven useful for you because it was 3 months into that this all happened. Right. And we were able to change that all. And like, I focus on that a lot for everybody out there. Cause I know there's students out there too. Listen to this. There's other GSD students right now on this interview commenting and stuff. And I just want them to also hear like showing up and using it in this way matters. Like it's those bottlenecks and the dedicated calls for skills and the dedicated calls for bottlenecks. Those are where we should be showing up. And a guy like Mason making 60 G's a month, it goes down a little bit. He shows up and he's the first one there raising his hand and having a conversation. So he knows damn well, if there's one thing I'm going to do, it's going to monologue him enough information to find something in there that's probably going to help. Right.
Yep.
So that's good. So now
I get the info, I bounce. And then
that's true too. He is first one in, gets his stuff. He's like, all right, cool. If there's other stuff, he's good. Otherwise he gets right back to work. So I love that. So, okay, we've gotten up to that point. Now the bad stuff happens. So tell everybody, what happened and what happened to the lead cost immediately after that. So what was the issue that you ran into?
Yeah. So again, we've been operating about $19 a lead for somewhere between 6 to 9 months consistently. Literally didn't have to touch the ads at all because of the work we did in that upfront 45 days, which was incredible because I thought I'd have to be in there like every other week at a minimum. So they literally were just sitting there on autopilot, bookings coming in, closing people every now and then. I still think I can improve my return on my ad spend overall long-term, but still over the 6 to 9 months while I was just operating, I was making like a 2 or 3 times return on my ad spend. So, I mean, anything above 1 is good for me personally. No complaints there. Everything was great. And then basically they made those big changes we talked about. The biggest one being that they took my breadwinner away, which was the National Association of Realtors. Anybody that's in the real estate space know it's a pain in the ass to run any sort of advertisements because of the special ads category. They're always taking things away. Anybody that's in finance as well knows that, like credit, finance, that type of thing, because they have the same restrictions. So they took National Association of Realtors away, as well as some of the job titles and a few other things, like a few other interests and stuff. And so we went from $19 a lead for the past 6 to 9 months to all the way up to about $120 a lead. And once I realized, I thought it was just a blip, like, a random thing. Like it was a mix up, like it was going to fix itself. It was just happened to be that couple days or that week.
Let's hover right there for a second. Because this is important, right? So when he's saying he thought it was a blip, something that we train people to do, especially in the media buying side, for all of you guys that are here interested in that, right, is specifically not to worry about the micro. There is going to be stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis that where like maybe Facebook glitches out, or maybe your audience, you just got too far down in the bucket, or maybe you had that kind of stuff going on. That is an issue where we don't want to overreact and break something that wasn't already broken. We're not trying to fix shit that isn't already broken. We're not trying to go in and stir the pot around when something was working and printing money for us before, right? But when we know what is the difference between a micro and a macro reaction, which is understanding the time length, the amount of views it's had, the amount of fatigue that the campaign and ad sets and ads have had, and where to decide to make a decision, that's when we go out of that. So it's important to focus in on, he made the correct decision. Oh, it's bad. Holy shit. But we can't wake up one morning and say today's leads costs are bad and break the whole campaign. We have to wait. So keep going, Mason. Just wanted to hover on that for a second.
Yeah. So I saw it had jumped up. I probably noticed it about 3 or 4 days in, because I noticed less leads were coming in and less bookings were being made. Because at this point I didn't even have a setter. So like people were they were getting auto messages and they were booking themselves from the lead forms on the thank you page, or from the autoresponder messages that I was sending out that you guys also helped me set up. And I just noticed after about 3 days or so, 3 or 4 days, that not as many were coming in. I checked, I saw it was around 120 and I was like, oh, this doesn't look good. But again, focus on the macro. I didn't want to use a stock reference again. I didn't want to panic buy or panic sell and change a bunch of things. So basically I was like, I'll give it another week at least. So I basically kept looking at my overall, and then as like your maximum, if you're looking at your timeline and the ad manager. And then as you're looking at ads manager, basically after another 4 or 5 days had gone by, I kept monitoring like the 7-day, you know what I mean? And then I gave it 2 weeks in total, where I looked at the 14-day and I was like, if it hasn't changed in 2 weeks and it's been like this every day, now's the time to address it. So then got to the point where I was like, all right, I need to figure out what it is. But it was taking me a while to figure out at the time. And at that time, I also didn't have the ability to jump on the calls, because I had weekly client coaching calls that were at the same time as this. So that's how that issue progressed for probably a month and a half. And then it took a good 2 to 3 weeks once we got the new audiences and everything we're about to talk about to get it evened back out, because it kind of goes up and then it's kind of a bell curve and it slowly comes back down to correct itself. So that's kind of the process that I had walked through.
Yeah. And so what we ended up having to do there, to dive into what he just said, when he got back on the calls, the stress point, the breaking point was the audience. So one that we'd been using even back in our real estate rainmaker days when we were doing heavy advertising, the National Association of Realtors in the US is just such an obvious interest point, right? So we lose a lot of different targeting options you can do, but that one was always a staple, because I mean, come on. Why would you even be visiting that page or liking that page or in that interest category if you weren't a realtor? It's very, very, very unlikely. And then on top of that, the way that we teach to do copy and call outs and all that kind of stuff should segment out the rest, right? So that one was a staple. Even for us back in the day, it worked really well. Unfortunately, what happened was they took that away, right? And that's what Facebook does. And they just wiped that one completely out. Is that correct? Correct, Mason? That one's gone.
Oh yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
It is no more. That my money pot's gone.
So that one.
Now we're finding another one. So we're all good.
And so that's what we did, right? And so now we go, okay, right? And this is where this sheet, for those of you who are lucky enough to be on here, is going to be helpful, because what you do is, okay, well, this was the stress point. I guess let's go back to testing this. Because interestingly to point out, too, is that Mason, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd whittled it down to basically just one ad was running still in there, right? You'd done the creative testing and all the other stuff, but you had one winning ad that was running in all the winning audiences. So it was basically a control ad. Is that fair?
That's a fair assessment. So when they were running for the 6 to 9 months where they were just on autopilot, I had my winner at that point in terms of like the ad copy and the image combination and the headline combination. So what I did is I just used that as my constant. And then I typically, like, if you're not from a science or, engineering background or something, maybe you wouldn't think about this too much, but you can reflect back to like, high school, like science class, where they talk about like your constants and your variables when you're doing experiments and stuff. Mm-hmm. And you always want to just have the one variable, everything else to be a constant. So the advertisement that was already a winning ad, I just used that as my constant. And then what we did to jump in to figure out like our variable was the new audience, since that was, as you said, the trigger point or the breaking point. So then we created about 5 different audiences. And then we went through the rapid fire testing to figure out which one of those was performing best. And now I'm kind of back at the point now where I can test more headlines and images, and now a different offer out, since it's kind of getting some fatigue.
Love it, dude. I love it. And I want everybody to really picture that, because what this whole process is designed to be is exactly what he was just saying. It's to isolate individual variables so that we're making decisions based on what works. We're isolating this using a control ad. It's just audiences that are different. Then it's just hooks and offers that are different. Then it's different variations on creative. This allows us to build and scale, but by isolating variables. Otherwise, you're doing what I say a lot of ad people do is they do the spaghetti method. They cook a bunch of ads, like a bunch of noodles, and then they throw that at the wall and they're like, well, those 2 pieces of spaghetti worked. Those are cooked. Doesn't tell you anything. Don't learn anything. All you learned was that one ad works. But what is the number one takeaway you should have taken away from what we're talking about right now? Eventually, something will break. Mason had all of this done really well, and he found a great working ad, a bunch of working audiences, and it worked perfectly for, I think we said 6-7 months, and then it broke. And it just skyrocketed, right? So if you don't have a method of testing variables, of isolating variables and going back through this process, you could just end up being screwed. Because if your reaction is just make a whole bunch of new ads and throw them all at the wall, none of them might work. And you didn't learn anything from the winning one. You're just making a whole bunch of new stuff and hoping some of that works, right? Had Mason, for instance, just been like, okay, well, this offer suddenly doesn't work. Let me make a whole bunch of different images, offers, things like that, and throw them against the wall, which is what a lot of people would do. Right. I want to hover in on everybody out here in Facebook land. That's what a lot of people would have done is, okay, well, this ad suddenly broke. I got to make a whole bunch of new ads and offers and thoughts and thrown it against the wall. Then we wouldn't have figured out what was going on. But because he had worked through a process that told him these are our winning audiences, these are our winning ads. When one of the winning audiences that really was the winning audience broke, he knew he didn't have to test the offer again right away inside that same audience or inside the other one. He knew to isolate that variable, move forward, and create something new because he knew he had the winners. And then I'm going to dive in a little bit on what specifically we do for the audience process so that you guys can kind of see, okay, how did we fix that? How did we move through? I have a process for WIT to come up with audiences on Facebook because there's normal breakdown categories of pretty much everything on here. All right. What those categories are is who they are, what they do, and then 3D. So this is usually where I stick to. Okay. So who they are is stuff like interests, who they are, what type of people they are, what do they like? What do they like, right? If they have behavioral stuff like marriage and all that kind of stuff, or kids, all of that kind of stuff, right? Behavior will be great if I could spell. Can't though, so you're all going to have to deal with it. What they do, this is going to be job titles, right? This is going to be employers. This is going to be maybe education, right? Business owners, all this kind of stuff. And then 3D is must match, meaning they are one of these and they also must match one of these, right? Now, Mason, can you walk me through what the initial audiences? I think we made like 5 of them, so we might not have to go through all of them, but let's just give a couple of examples of this for the group.
Yeah, it's all right. I remember all 5. So, and I think we can go through it pretty quickly so everybody can make the most of it. So the first one was employers.
Yes, employers. Audience 1 was employers. So just to give example, that's like your Coldwell Banker, Coldwell D, we'll just say, your Keller Williams, right?
Max, all those people, yeah.
All those ones. Okay. What was number 2?
The second one was job titles. So real estate agent, real estate broker, licensed real estate agent, those type of things that you can find on Facebook.
Licensed Real estate agent. Okay. And what was number 3?
3 was interests. So that was anything that I could find that were coaches, real estate magazines, real estate publications, that type of stuff.
Okay. And then 4?
4 was the first of the quote 3D audiences, which was a 1% lookalike based on my previous booked calls. So a 1% lookalike off of the past leads that had booked calls with us that did not become clients, plus a must match for employers. So it was a 1% lookalike plus must match.
Must match employers. Perfect. Okay.
And then the fifth audience was the last 3D one, which is a 1% lookalike of all past book calls and past clients, plus a must match with the interests.
Interests. Right. I love this. And what I really want to point out here to everybody is look at all the combinations of stuff you can create with the 3Ds to test and the lookalikes and the different stuff on here. So while we created 5, and we normally do, right, state to create 4 or 5 of these and whittle them down in the future, which is exactly what happened right now, right? The future, here's the future. We had to run 5 more, right, for them. You can create more different variations on this, make it more narrow, more broad, depending on what your CPMs and everything look like. And it works out great. Now, which one of these is the couple of winners that we ended up with on here, just for people?
My winners right now are the 3rd one, the interest category.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the 1% lookalike calls and clients, which would be number 5.
So 3 and 5.
And yeah, but I have a feeling that number 4 may beat out number 3 once I get up and running. But as always, Facebook's being a little pain in the rear, rejecting my ads because of special ads category. So that's a whole different discussion, but we should have audience 4 up soon. And I think it's going to give the interest one a run for its money.
Love it. And just for people's reference out there, for those of you who do work with real estate agents, when you do run ads to the real estate agents, even though it's not technically against terms of service, you will very frequently get flagged for running in a special housing category, even though you're not. Your ads will get approved upon review, but it's better to do them one at a time. So the way that we do things in our agency and the GSD is we'll always get one ad approved, especially if it's a risk-based thing. Then once that's approved, we'll layer out all the rest of the ads, and that usually avoids getting, any account shut down, banned, all that kind of stuff. Consider it like a safety protocol.
My best piece of advice that has helped me get through that hurdle as quickly as you possibly can. It's still a pain in the rear, but never use the automatic request to review button. If that happens, if you're in the special ads category, or if you're in finance. I have some friends that are in the credit space. What has worked really well for us is instead of using because it'll say it's been rejected, click here to request a review. Don't. Open up the business manager, go to the little help button at the bottom left. If you're still in the old business manager versus the new setup they have now, click the contact support. There'll be that little button that says start a email or a chat thread. Send it in there. Say my ad has been disapproved. Say, hey, it's been disapproved. Explain the situation. In my case, hey, it's for real estate agents. It's not special ads category. Can you help me take a look at this and possibly overturn it? Thank you for your time. Submit it. If you do it through chat, if it's available at the time, they'll typically give you a call on the phone. You get to chat with a real person who will actually tell you that they've reviewed it. And yeah, that's the case. They'll give you a better case and they'll send a manual review into the higher level team, the internal support team or whatever they call it, but they'll give it in with their good graces. And 9 times out of 10, within an hour of me doing that, they've always approved it 9 times out of 10. So not always, but it's a much faster. If you rely solely on the just click requests thing, I would say that was more of a 50-50 shot, but 9 times out of 10, that other solution has worked well for me. So if you are experiencing it, take that, use it. If you don't already try that, because it's worked really well for me.
So you guys came here for ninja tips. And you're getting extra juicy ninja tips today because that's hella good. I mean, I'll tell you right now, hitting that automatic review button too many times can create issues too. So having this way kind of going around that's honestly huge. So the last tidbit I want to point out, guys, right? Testing never stops. So this we actually, I think we're still using that same control ad. We fixed the audience issue by doing this extra level, and now it's gotten it pretty much after a couple of weeks of testing that it's gotten it back down to 10 to 20, right? It's circling between the two, correct, Mason?
Yeah, we brought it down to 10. It's somewhere between, actually, I just checked it before this. Before this week, it had been somewhere around 13, 14. Right now it's back up somewhere between 17 and 19, but it's still fine because it's back where we were originally, actually just a little bit below. Yeah. But like I said, we have that one last audience to test. Once I get that up and running by having one of those phone calls with Facebook later today, then I'll have I want to pull out my 2 winners. Once I have my 2 winners in terms of audiences, then we're going to dive in and we're going to adjust the offer.
Love it. Yeah. So he's going to be then moving in. We're still rolling through here to get them back down around hopefully 10 to 15 permanently. We'll be doing that through doing testing for the offers and the hooks, testing for the creatives after that, and making sure that we're rolling through all of these things. And a couple of things, actually, honestly, at the beginning of this, when I launched this interview and I asked Mason to do this with me, it was only going to be about the ads. But I do like that we got the chance to kind of be real with everybody out there. And to me, it's good to always show that the highlight reel, there's also always other stuff behind the scenes. And for Mason, he got himself right back up to the highlight reel where it's freaking amazing. But it's good for all of you guys to know that there's ups and downs. It's business. The whole point is you're trading a stable paycheck for a life that you want. That life that you want comes with some ups and downs. And it's always about when you zoom in, again, micro, it kind of looks like this, kind of what Mason actually made this motion earlier, right? But when you zoom out and you can look at life and business and everything in the macro instead of the micro, it probably looks like this if you're doing it right. Yeah. Occasionally you go like maybe he was using stock market analogies earlier, you get a little bear market for a couple of months and then you're right back up into your bull run, right? And so that's really at the end of the day, it's the persistence, it's the support structure that he's had, and it's also his own willingness to shake it off, get back to work and get shit done. That's really helped him in my mind, which is the most important thing. It's create a higher floor. So when he started, it was with no clients. He got himself to 12K or 5 to 10K or whatever it was, he said. And then to the GSD where we got up to 60, we kept it there for a long time. I think I don't know, wherever we're at in like a year now, and then it dropped down, but that drop down was right around 18, 20. So there's your lower floor. Whereas your floor was 0, then it was 5 to 10. Now it's 20. And your ceiling keeps rising up with it. But it's that lower floor now that you know exists. And that's probably the worst floor you'll have, right? Now you're going to create a lower floor again. Creating that is really what I say, FU business, right? And it allows you to stably increase your life, your business, and everything else. So I love it. I appreciate you very much for sharing, Mason. Anything that you want to any notes or monologues you want to give before we sign off, anything like that? And while you do that, I'll look everybody out there again, last chance to ask questions. And then we'll sign off.
Regarding the ads, I would just say, if you are listening right now, definitely get your hand on that sheet, because I have, since total transparency, I have invested in a few other programs since joining GSD, thinking, hey, the grass may be greener, or maybe there's something else here that I didn't learn here. It wasn't the case. I can say that comfortably, and there's a reason why I'm still here. So get your hands on that split testing sheet, because you don't have to. I wish I would have had my hands on that before I spent the 5K that I did in ads. I don't regret it, because it was a learning experience, and I'm glad I did it, because it was one of those things that helped me have the right mindset of investing in myself and having to be willing to put that in, just like you do when you invest in anything. But if you can get your hands on that sheet, get your hands on the ad, the split test, or what's it called again?
I don't even know. Did I give it a name? We'll call it the testing sheet. I like that. It's really
not the testing sheet. Rapid fire testing.
Rapid fire testing.
Take the rapid fire testing sheet, get your hands on that. As far as just the other stuff, I think the only other real big topic we talked about, of course, was the mindset stuff. To bring yourself back, I would just recommend doing what Cody and I do, where what would myself a year ago or 5 years ago be telling myself now if they heard me complaining about this? Would they be complaining about this? And if the answer is no, just go back to your roots. Again, don't panic buy, don't panic sell. Don't worry about it. You've been there before. You've made it through the challenges since you've surpassed that point already, and just come back to your roots and have a support system of some sort, whether that's these guys here, whether it's somebody else, just have somebody there. So you don't feel like you're in it on your own. And I pretty much, I guess, would just leave it on that. And other than that, get your answers, be impatient with yourself. It's your business and your livelihood and your client success on the line. So be impatient like I am, jump on the calls right away, get your answers. And if you got to go, it doesn't mean like jump off the call to completely disregard everybody else or not to participate any longer. It's more so get your answers, get what you need, and then go immediately take action, because nothing's going to happen if you don't take action. Just like when nobody wants to, that's the other thing I would leave off. I'll say this: don't be that client that you complain about who could be getting results with your program, but they're not, because they're not showing up doing what they should be. Don't be that client. That's all I would say.
I don't even have anything to add to that. I love that. So I'm going to leave it right there. The only thing I'm going to say is, everybody, once again, please give it up for Mason for sharing some of his time with us today and going through his story. And honestly, just drop some love just for him, showing up and being real, right? It's always good to have some real people share their real stories and get through that shit. So love it. From me to you, Mason, appreciate the hell out of you, man. Thank you so much for showing up. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. GSD family, get out there and get shit done. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you all. Appreciate you, Cody. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending the time to watch that amazing training. Like I mentioned previously, my intention is for you not just to watch that training, but if you got something out of it, if you think this information is useful, I want you to continue that journey with us. And you can do that in a couple of ways. One, I want you to smash that subscribe button so that you get notified every single time we put another one of these out, which will be at minimum once to twice per week. The other thing I want you to do is go ahead and click that next video right there beside you so that you can dive in and get shit done. Hope to see you out there.